So hello everyone, thank you for tuning in. So in today's session, I'm going to talk about index match. Index match is a function in Excel that is used to extract data from one data set into another. You could be having a data set and you just want to extract information from another data set into another data set you're working in. In other words, it's like you're having data set A and data set B, and you want to automatically pick data from data set B into data set A. You can use the manual approach and you will still be able to get results, but if the amounts of data that you're dealing with are in thousands, let's say the data you're looking at, they are like 1,000 entries, that would take a whole day. It would take quite a significant amount of time to be able to achieve a result. So the index match function comes in to help us cut on that time. So in today's session, I am basically going to introduce this index match from the very basics, from simple to complex. It's not exactly complex. If you do it multiple times, it becomes second nature, but I'll just use the word seemingly complex. So I'm going to talk about what the index function is, and we are going to use an illustration using this small data set that you're looking at on your screen. Then I will go ahead and talk about the match function, and then from there I will talk about how the two combine, how the two interrelate. That is the index match function. Then after explaining how the two interrelate, then we shall go ahead and start using it, using this very table that you're looking at on your screen, how to work it out, how to use it in circumstances when there is an Excel table involved, and also in circumstances where an Excel table is not involved. And then definitely we shall then get to data cleaning. It is very important prior to doing such tasks that your data is clean, but that is something that we shall do at the end. And then from there we shall go ahead and conclude, probably with a case study. So let's get to it. So what we are having here is some data. There are like how many entries are these? These are 16 entries, as you can see. It's just showing us the name, some random names here, the name of the employee, their annual income, the number of cars they are having, and their number of dependents. It's just a normal Excel table, like you can see. Like a table, things were typed out and we went up here into this. In other words, we just put borders on these cells. An Excel table is something different technically. Technically speaking, an Excel table is, well, we shall look at it later on. This is not an Excel table. This is just data with its cells having borders. Okay. So now, what does the index function do? Now, the index function simply returns an item out of a huge data set. Let's say if let's say I have a huge data set, the index function simply helps me to return what is in a specific cell. So let's start. Let's say this is going to be equals index. That's what I've written. Index, open brackets. So equals open bracket equals index, open brackets. Now, of course, as you're writing this formula, they always give you the syntax. Okay, we have the first index in open brackets array, then the row number, and then the column number, where you see where the brackets are box brackets. For example, here we have the array, then the row number, comma, that is array, comma, row number, comma, column number. Now, where you see in the syntax, where you see the brackets are box, I don't know if I have, that's what I should call them, box brackets. For example, here you're seeing box column number. Where they are box, it means that filling in that syntax is optional. But where there is after every a comma and there are no brackets, it means it's compulsory that you should fill that syntax. Now from here, when I type out the word index, you can see that there are two options. There is the first option, index into open brackets, array, row number and column number. Then the second, index in open brackets, reference, row number, column number, like that. There are two options. Now I am not going to do for purposes of this video, or in other words, I'm trying to hit the nail on the head. I'm trying to use the hammer to hit the nail on the head. I am not going to explain what the first one is, because the first one involves using a whole data set. Let me not waste time there. Let's go to the second one, because it's the one that is going to be the basis. So the index here, we are going to look at index open brackets, the reference. So let's look at reference here. Oh, okay, if I may use normal English. Index open brackets, what comes first is more like what result do you want? Let's say in this case I want the annual income. Okay, I want annual income. So when I say index open brackets, my open brackets, what I'm going to put here is where I want my final result to come from. So in this case I can say I want I'm looking for annual income. So I'll say index open brackets, then I'll come and select this. I'll come and select that reference here, okay, from the first annual income to the last at the very bottom, like that. Then I'll put a comma like that. Okay, so index, then since I've just selected one, just that column. Now what is the row number? I've selected this column. Now what is the row number I want? Now I might say that I want maybe I want the annual income for Shube, who so happens to be on position number 3. That is row 3. Okay, so I'll come here and say comma 3, and then I'll press enter. And then from here, what you can see, it's bringing me that if you look at number 3 here, it is, let me color code this. That's what I wanted and that's what I got. Okay, let's do it again. All right, I'm saying this is equal to index function open brackets. What do I want? I want the annual income. That is the result I want. So I'm going to select the entire row because that is my final result that I want. Then I say comma, and then I want the annual income that is corresponding to position number 3. Now position number 3 so happens to be where Shube is. Okay, now position number 3, if we are to count, how do we count these positions? We count them basing on where you started your highlighting from. In this case, our highlighting began from the top here, so it means it's 1, 2, that's the third box. So when I put here a 3 and I press enter, it brings me 839,000, which so happens to be this one. Let's do it again for something else random. Let's look at, I've color coded this one, let's call it green. Okay, this one I've color coded it green. Number of cars, there are 2. So I've just color coded it, but I just want to use the index function to show you how we can get these 2. Now let's say that I wanted to find I wanted to find in the column for number of cars, I want to find the number of cars that are in the 9th position, who happens to be Viola in the 9th position. So I'll come here and say that's going to be equal to index open brackets, the array. Of course, I want where my final result is supposed to come from. My final result is supposed to come from that number of cars, comma, and then I say I want in the 9th position. Now this 9th position, we are counting from where we started selecting from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So when I put 9 there, I press enter, it's going to give me 2, and that is the 2. I think we've gotten what the index function does. Okay, the index function simply returns something. It's going to return, it's going to return a figure according to row, column. Yeah. Let's do it one more time. We have quite a big figure here. Number of dependents. Let's say this is line 13 here. We want number of dependents to end up like that. Let me give it another color. Okay. So again, I'm going to say it's going to be equal to index. Okay. I want my result to come from here, from the row, comma, and then which column? I mean this is the column, then the row is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, the 13th row. If I put here 13, I press enter, it's going to bring me 934, which is right there, 934. Let me try and modify these things we've just done a bit. I'm going to repeat this same formula here. The first one we had gotten here, we had gotten where there is yellow, the 839,000. Let me modify it a bit in this next cell here and say, let me put, remember when we were looking at this, if you look at our formula up here, we said index this, the first part of the formula was that, which was the row, then comma 3. Now instead of putting the 3 there, let me put the 3 outside here. Let me put 3 there, like that. Okay, I've put the 3 there. Now let me type out the index function here. Here I can simply come and say that is going to be equal to index, open brackets. What is our, where do we want to get our result? I want to get my result from here. Yeah, comma, from which position? Now the position here, instead of let me do this again. So I shall say this is going to be equal to index, okay, which, where would we want it from here, like that, okay, comma. So now which position do you want this to come from? Now the position, remember when we were doing it here the first time, we just put there number 3, but here we have put the 3 here. So instead of typing out here number 3, I can just select this cell, because this cell is having number 3. I click on that. It's the same thing, but only that this time the 3 is in another cell. Then I press enter, and then it will still give me the same answer. Okay, so meaning that if I I simply come and play around with this number. Maybe I put number 4 in the 4th place. We have 344, which is here. Here in the 5th place we have 322,000. If I come here and change it to number 5, like that, it's going to give me a different answer here. You get the idea. That is as far as index function is concerned. I repeat, the index function simply is going to help us to return what is in a value after identifying where the value is located as far as the row and columns are concerned. That is as far as the index function is concerned. Now let's look at it. Let's look at the match function. Now you're going to realize that the match function kind of like tries to do the reverse of the index function. How? So let's get to the match function. The match function is simply going to bring back the position. So the syntax here is it's going to be equal to match, open brackets. The match, now let's look at the lookup value. What is our lookup value? Let's say I want to look for a name here. Let me use the name Robert here. So I'm going to say match, open brackets. I'm going to bring open the apostrophe, double apostrophe. Then I'm going to type out the word Robert. Then I'm going to close the apostrophe. That's the lookup value according to the syntax here. Match, open brackets, that's the lookup value, comma. Now where do I want it? Where do I want to look for this Robert thing? Where is it? Now Robert, definitely we know, is under the column for names of employees. So I'm going to go ahead and select like that. I'm selecting from Jimmy down to Arthur. Then I'm going to press comma. Then Now, after pressing comma, the third syntax, they're asking us, do we want less than, greater than, or exact match? We are going to type out 0, that we want to know the position of Robert exactly. So I'll type out 0, maybe I'll close brackets, then I press enter. Now you realize that it has given me position 6. And when we come here to our data set, you realize that Robert is in position 6. Okay? Let's do it on another. That is Robert. Let's do it on Andrew. Okay? Andrew, same. We're going to do, we want Andrew. So I'm going to go ahead and say equals to match. Open brackets. I want the lookup value here. We are looking for Andrew's name. We just want to find which position is Andrew. So I'm going to press open brackets, Andrew. Okay. Comma. Then the lookup array. Andrew is in this under name of employees. So I'll select all the names of the employees from the first one to the last one. And then I'll press comma, and then I'll press 0. I'll press 0 because I want an exact match. I do. Then I'll press, close the brackets, then I'll press enter, and it will give me 11. And indeed, Andrew here is in the 11th place. Now the 11th place here, remember, it is counting this 11th place basing on where you selected from. Okay, if I'm to double click here so that the formula shows up, we selected C2 to C17 here. Now this selection C2 is coming from here. So in other words, the position is based on where you started your selection from. 1, 2, 3. So for here, when we say Andrew is in the 11th place, it's because it started from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Now what if we selected, when we were selecting this thing here, we selected from 2, from Fiona's name. Let me do that now. As you're seeing now, the selection has changed. We are beginning from Fiona's names. We have left out Jimmy. In this formula, we selected from Fiona's name up to down. So now that means that when they are returning the result for Andrew's name, it's not going to be 11, because it's going to count from here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It will be 10. So if we are to press enter here, you're seeing it's bringing back 10. You get the idea. So now, what have we established here so far? We have established that the index function brings us what is in the cell. Okay? I say I want what is in cell number, maybe row, in this row, and column, like grid reference. So if in this row and in this column, whatever is in that cell, the index function brings it back. Then we have also seen that the match function is doing the reverse. With the match function, you're going to identify what is in the, let's say we look at Andrew, or we look at what is in the, we look at Andrew, and then we ask ourselves, where is Andrew located in this row? In this column. So the match function will bring back the position of Andrew in that column. We have established that. Now let's go ahead and combine the two. Now combining the two is like this. I'm going to go, it takes us back to the index function. For example here, let's get back to this figure. This figure, if I'm to double click so that it reveals the formulas, we said it's going to be index, the column, index, show us where the result is coming from, which is that column. Okay, then we look for the position. Okay, position number 5. Now position number 5, we see here it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It brought us 322. Okay, which so happens to be Phoebe. Yeah, that is what we have here. Now when we combine the two, It means that in the place of where we are supposed to put this figure, the position that we want, we are instead putting there the match function. So remember here, we put, when we were trying to, when I was changing this figure, I can put 5, it brings me this figure. I put 6, 8, position number 8, it brings me another figure here. Okay, because if you look at position number 8, if you come here, 8 is Stephen, it's giving me his annual income of 322. Let's say I want for Arnold there, what that is position 13. If I'm using the index function here, I simply come here and put the word 13, I mean number 13. When I put number 13, it's going to change. It's going to bring me the 8 billion, which is Arnold's annual income. If I want for Jimmy, which is number 1 here, I'm going to simply come here and put 1. When I put 1, then it changes to 2.1. So now, this place here, where I'm changing the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, these figures, instead of putting them manually, instead I am going to use, I'm going to use the match function to return a figure here. Remember, the match function is trying to return for me just a number, as you can see here, these two examples. Remember, with the match function, it simply returns the position. Now, instead of putting in here a single number to return me results, I'm now instead going to use the match function here to return a number. So in this place where there is 1, instead of typing out 1, I'm going to type out the match function, so that when I type out the match function, the index function here has a match function incorporated in it. Let's put a match function here. Let's say I'm going to look at Stephen right there. Okay, this is Stephen, and I want to find the position of Stephen. Okay, so I'm going to come here and put that is going to be equal to match. Okay, match open brackets. Okay, what's the lookup value? The lookup value here is Stephen, so I'm going to open brackets and say Stephen. Okay, like that. Stephen here is capital S. Stephen, close. Stephen, comma, and then the lookup array is Stephen is here. Okay, then I will close bracket, then I put comma again, then I put 0, which is the exact match, then I close brackets. Now you realize that Stephen, they've brought me that Stephen is number 8 according to the match function. As you can see here, Stephen is number 8 according to the match function. So if you come here and see, it's number 8, and this number 8, when we put the index function here, it has returned. Okay, it has returned the salary for Stephen, the annual income for Stephen, which is 322 right there. So in other words, here what you're seeing here is, in the place when we're typing in the index function here, in the place where we put the position that we want, the second position, the third position, that place is instead replaced by the match function. So instead of putting in the number, the position manually, it is now the match function doing that for us. So that is what this is what is happening here. That let's try another. Let's say I want for Dennis. Okay, let me color code it here and do it that way. Okay, I want for Dennis here. Of course, before the position for Dennis here, we are all seeing here that it is 15, right? It is 15. But instead of typing out 15 here manually, I'm instead going to come and do the match function like here. So in the place of Stephen, let me put there Dennis. Let me delete Stephen and put there Dennis, like that. Then I press enter. So the match function is automatically bringing me the number 15, which is Dennis's position. And so consequently, the index function is able to return Dennis's annual income. As simple as that. Now, it might still be a bit confusing, but bear with me a bit. When we start combining these things in practice, it's going to come out. So now, so in other words, what we have learned here is that when you look at the index function here, the syntax is, it's the index first, then in open brackets, we put out where the row where we want our result to come from, comma, then we put the position where we want the thing to come from. And now, when we were beginning, we said the position, at first we were putting in position manually, putting in 1, 2, 3. But now, with the coming of the match function, it means now the positioning here is being generated by another function called the match function. And now that is what gives birth to what we call the index match function. So the index match function, that is now the syntax. Now, here I have just split things into two. Now I'm going to type out the index match function in one box. Okay, so, but before we go to typing out the index match function in one box, there's something that I would like you to see regarding, regarding this index function. Let's see, for example, here we were indexing. Now let's say this is, there's something I want you to see regarding the index function. This is, this 15, this number 15 here, the position 15 is for Dennis, okay? Let me color code Dennis all through. Let me make him green, okay? From here you can see that Dennis, that's the name of the employee. His annual income is 300 something millions. The number of cars he has are 2, and he has 53 dependents. Now we can use the index function, the index match function, to extract this independently, that independently, that independently. Remember, the index function pulls out what is in that box. But when it is pulling out what it is in that box, the position of that box is being given to us by the match function. Now, let's get back here. So, when you look at here, what is this figure? If you look, if I'm to double click on this to reveal the formula, you realize that we said index, and then what we selected here, D2 and D17. D2 and D17 is showing us the annual income, the column for annual income. And that is why in this box, it is bringing us our final answer as the annual income. And this final answer, which is the annual income, is corresponding to position number 15. Which position number 15 has been given to us by the match function. Now, what if I do not want the annual income, but I want the number of cars for Dennis? Okay, I want the number of cars for Dennis. What do? I simply come here to this index function. I'm going to double click on it. Here, let me delete this index open brackets. Now, index open brackets. Then now I'm going to select the number of cars here. Now it's the one. Number of cars from top to bottom. So I have selected the number of cars. As you can see in this syntax, it is cell E2 to E17, okay, comma, then which position? Position 15, which is L3. So it means that here in this box now, because I have selected number of cars, it is now going to bring me the number of cars corresponding to position 15. In other words, it's the number of cars corresponding to Dennis. So here, if I press enter, you see that it's giving me 2. Okay, so it is giving me 2, and when we come down here, that is the 2 it has given us right there. In other words, Dennis, who is position 15, is 2. Let's say I want to find the number of dependents, okay, for Dennis. Or in other words, I want to find out the number of dependents that are corresponding to this number 15. Okay, that number 15. So the number of dependents, still I'm going to press the change its index, open brackets. Let me change this reference. Open brackets, where do I want my answer to come from? I am interested in the number of dependents. So index this whole column, okay? Index that whole column, comma, then the row number, okay? Row number is row number 15, okay? Which row number 15 was given to us by the match function. Remember, this time we are not putting it in manually. Then I press enter, and it's giving me 53, which is that, okay? 53 dependents for Dennis. That is what. So what does this show? This shows us that this index function that we are using, it is capable of giving to us to return any number. You can index it, like you can index any column, okay, as long as the reference here is you know, it is being given to according to this reference. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that, let's say here our reference here is, let's say, Stephen, who is 8. You know, we have put in, let's put in Vivian here, okay? I come here and put in Vivian in the match function. So Vivian, the match function for Vivian has given us that Vivian is in position number 4. And when we come to the table, Vivian is in position number 4. And our index function has given us Vivian as 22. So what I'm trying to illustrate here is that the index function can give us information from this row, from that row, from any row, as long as its point of reference, its position, has been selected. If you want to find the number of cars or the number of dependents or the annual income of any of these people, depending on their position, you'll be able to get it. Only that, remember, at first the positioning, we were filling it in manually, position 4, position 5, position 6. The only difference now is that the positioning, we are not filling it in manually, but rather we are filling it in using the match function. So in other words, there are two functions in one. It will all come together in practice. Someone might wonder, then why don't, instead of stressing ourselves with the match function, why don't we just be filling in the numbers manually? Well, it will make sense as you keep practicing. Let's first proceed. Now let's combine the two functions. So if you look at this index function, it is index. If you look at the formula bar, okay, if I to double click here, it is index, open brackets, we select the array or the column, comma, then the number, the position, and we say that this number is being generated by the match function. So now this time round, instead of doing it like that, we've done it here, instead we are going to come and type out the match function right there directly, and now that is what we are calling the index match function. So in this case, if I'm to do it here directly here in this place of L3, I'm simply going to type out the match function. Now I hope you remember the match function. So instead of typing out L3, which so happens to be this reference, which has a match function, the function here is being put here. So we shall say it's the match function, open brackets, okay. The lookup value, what are we looking up? Let's say the lookup value is, we are looking for Vivian. Remember, the match function returns the position, and here now we are trying to type out the match function to bring us the position. So we shall say we are looking out for Vivian, okay, comma, in which array? Lookup array. Where is this Vivian name found? It is found under the name of employees. So I'll come and select the whole like that, comma 0, the exact match. Then as you can see here, it is a closed bracket. Now take very keen note that the match function, we are having 2 open and closing brackets that are in red, but we need to close up the entire function. So because we need to close up the entire function, I'm going to put another bracket there like that, which is going to be black, which represents that it's corresponding with the first black bracket at the beginning. And then I press enter, and now it's giving me the results 22. And if you can come here and see Vivian, indeed the number of dependents are 22. Now here I have combined the 2 functions. Before I was showing it to you in a broken format. In other words, I was showing it to you in more like step-by-step bit. I was separating the things in different cells. Now I am typing everything out in the same cell, and that is what it's bringing. Let's do it again. Let's try index. Okay, remember, index is bringing in something from somewhere, a certain cell. Let's say I want to return this figure using the index match function. I want this figure to be returned. Let me highlight it. This figure, I've highlighted it. It is corresponding to Jude. Okay, this 211 million. It is corresponding to Jude. I want to use the index match function to return this very figure. What do I do? I'm going to come here and say equals index, open brackets. Now index, open brackets, what we first type out is where our answer is coming from, or the answer we want. The answer we want is coming from here. Okay, from under annual income, because we are interested in that figure. So index, I type out that, comma, now which position? Now the position is being given to us by the match function. So now I do match function, open brackets. Now the match function, where is the lookup value? Of course, the lookup value is the name Jude. I'm going to just type it out here, Jude. Okay, close, open up I type it out. I have to first open the, are they called apostrophes, double apostrophes, open and close apostrophes, comma, where is Jude? This Jude, where is he? That is the lookup array. I want Jude. In which array is he? The Jude I am looking for is under name of employees. That's where I select under name of employees. That's what I've selected. Then I press comma. Then I want the exact match. So I put 0. Then I close brackets. Remember, I closed the bracket once. Okay, it is a red bracket, but it is but then this whole function was opened by a black bracket. Index open brackets, the first open bracket for the index function was a black bracket. So to close off this entire function, I have to put double brackets here. The first bracket was the red one, which closed the match function. The second bracket, which I've just put, is the black bracket, which is covering the whole function here, the index function. Then I press enter, and now it has brought me 211, which is that. We are together. Let me do this one more time. Let's say I've selected this cell. Okay, let me highlight it in a different color so that you're able to see it. It's in blue, red, this one. Okay, now this cell has 45, number of dependents 45, yeah, and this number of dependents 45 are corresponding to Jemima. Okay, now I want the index match function to return this 45. What do? I'm going to come here. I say equals, okay, index, open brackets, index. What do we want to return? I want to return this 45, but this 45 is found in this column, so I'm going to select the entire column. Okay, comma, then in which position? Then I said match, open brackets, the lookup value, Now this is corresponding to Jemima, so I look for Jemima, who is the lookup value. I'm going to open open the I keep forgetting the name of that thing, apostrophe, double apostrophe. Then I type out the word Jemima, close it, comma, the lookup array. The lookup array is where is Jemima found? Jemima is found here, comma, then I put 0 because I want an exact match. Then I put double closing brackets. Then I press enter and it brings me back this 45. So this 45 is what we were looking for, and we've been able to return it here using the index match function. Now that we have mastered what the index match function does, and that is how it operates, so now it's time. Now here I'm just using illustrations, and our data set is very small. It is very small and it's just for demonstration purposes. But when it comes to very big data sets, this index match function comes in handy, as it helps to save a huge amount of time. Now, there is something I would like to also point out. This place where I have been typing things out, let's get back to this cell. If I'm to double click on that cell, when we're looking at this index match function, I typed out here the word Jude. And if you come here and see, the word Jude is here. If I do not want to type out the word Jude, I can delete it, okay? And instead select the cell where the Jude is, like that, which is C8. Before I had typed it out, now I've just selected where it is, and I press enter, it will still bring us the same result. Same thing here. The word Jemima, where it is. I can delete the word Jemima. If I do not want to type it, I simply select where the cell is Jemima, like that. I press enter, and that's it. Now let's do that again, just one more time, just for Fiona. I want the index match function to return for me 290,000 for Fiona, right there, okay? It is 290 million actually for Fiona. I want the index match function to return me that figure. So I'm going to simply come here and say equals index, open brackets. Which figure am I interested in? I'm interested in 290,000 to come back. Where is this 290,000 found? It is found here in this column. So index this whole column. That's why I've selected it. Index that whole column, comma. Now, if I'm indexing that whole column, match. So I'm saying match. I'm going to match, open brackets. What am I matching? I want to match it with the lookup value is this one, okay? The lookup value is Fiona. I'll select Fiona, comma. Where is Fiona found? Fiona found is found in the under the name of employees, which I've selected there, comma, and I want an exact match, 0. Double brackets, enter. And it gives me 290,000. I'd like to tell you that when I was getting started or doing this thing, index match function, it was driven by the need to save time. In my earlier years, when I was just being employed, I was given Excel tasks that were very time consuming. Learning the index match function first gave me quite some headache. But because the alternative meant sitting down on an Excel template and spending 2-3 days sorting data, I had to by all means make sure that I learn this thing so that I save time. So when you're going to get to start out with this function, it will give you some headache. But if you encounter it if you use it like 3, 4, 5 times, it will become second nature. You will understand the syntax and it becomes easy to do. So now that we have understood the syntax for the index match function, now it's time for us to apply it in the practical way, in the practical sense. Let me still stick to this small table. Let me delete all this now. Let me stick to this small table now. Let's assume that now this is a data set. It has 16 names. Let me pull out some data here. There is that name Stephen. Then I've picked out also Andrew. Then I've picked out let me pick out Hope. Let me also pick out who else? Let me pick out Arthur as well. Okay. Now I have, this is a data set, just 16 names. These 16 names could be 1,000 names, but I've picked out only these ones. Okay, Arthur, Hope, Andrew, and Stephen. Okay. Now what I'm interested in is, I'm just interested in getting their annual income. I'm also interested in getting their number of cars. Yeah. Okay, I'm only interested in that. I do not want to know about their number of dependents. Okay. Now I have two options. I can either say annual income, where is Stephen? I come look for Stephen manually, get the annual income, copy, come and paste it here. Come to Andrew. I come to this table here. I look for Andrew, get his number of cars, copy, come here, paste it like that. I can do it because it's just 4 names here. I come to Hope. Annual income is 433. I copy, I come here and paste it, and I'm able to finish all the 4 names. That is easy, right? But if you're dealing with thousands of data points, that is going to take you days to finish. So now we use the index match function to help us. So how do we use it now? Okay, so now this is the point where it is practically being applied. So annual income. So here I want this box to be filled with Stephen. Okay, the annual income. So I'm going to say that's going to be equal to index. Okay, index, open brackets. Oh, index. Okay, so the index function, open brackets. Where do I want my answer to come from? Now I want my answer to come from the annual income, right? So I'm going to come and select the annual income like that. Okay, comma. Now that I've selected it, comma, then which position? Because remember, I am interested in Stephen. But now the question is, I want the Stephen's annual income to come here. But the question is that this Stephen here, under which position is he in the name of employees here? Because it is the position of Stephen here that is going to help me return the annual income in this box. So I'll come index, I select the row, then I'll come here and say match, open brackets, the lookup value. Remember before, the lookup value, we were either typing out the name, so I can either type out the name Stephen, or I can just select Stephen here. So I can just select Stephen right there. So the lookup value, I want Stephen, comma, where is this Stephen's name found? In this table, the Stephen I want is found in this column, so I come and select Stephen, comma, then I put 0. I want an exact match 0, then I close with double brackets, then I press enter, and now you see it is giving me 322. And if you come here and you see Stephen is 322, that is his annual income. Let's go on to the number of cars. I want to find the number of cars of Stephen. Take note here that the number of cars of Stephen, we are going to use the same. In other words, I want this box to be filled, so I'm going to use the index function to fill this box. But as I am filling this box, I am using it as I am picking data from this table and I'm bringing it here using the index match function. So I'm going to say it's going to be equal to index, open brackets, index, where do I want my cars to come from, and like my results. I am interested in the number of cars. When we come to our second table, where we want to get our result from, our result is under the column of number of cars. So that is where I'm going to select, like that, comma. Okay, so I have selected index, the column, okay, comma, index. Then now this, the number of cars that I want the number of cars that are corresponding to Steven here. But now where is this Steven person coming from? This Steven is in this column for employees. So I'm going to say it is going to be index this, comma, I'm going to say match. I'm going to match the lookup value. Now my lookup value, I'm looking for Steven. I click on the Steven. That's the Steven I'm looking for, comma. Where am I looking for Steven? Where is he? Steven so happens to be in this column. So I select on that column. Then I press again, comma, but I want exact match 0. So I put 0 to mean I want exact match 0. Then I close the two brackets. Enter. And you realize that the number of cars for Steven is 1. And then when we come here, we shall see that the number of Steven, the number of cars is 1. Right there. Now, I hope right now you have identified one thing here. That when we are using the index match function, we are trying to get data from one table and putting it into another table. But for that to work, these two tables should be having a common column that is connecting the two. So if you look at these two tables, the common column that is connecting these two, with the one which we are using as a reference point to connect, to shift data from table A to this, from this table to this small table, it is the column for name of employees. So this here, name of employees. Okay, that column for name of employee is the one that is connecting the two. So for index match function to work, the two tables you're trying to link, they must have a common denominator. And that common denominator for our case here is the name of employee. So it is the one we are using to shift data from one table to another. Let's just do it one more time for Andrew before we move on to the next issue. Moving it on to the one more time for Andrew. We are going to say this is, now we are interested in annual income for Andrew. I'm going to say that is going to be equal to index, open brackets, index. What do I want? I want the annual income for annual income. That's where my final answer is. So I come to this other table, annual income here. Okay, comma, match, open brackets. What's the lookup value? I am looking for Andrew. So I'm going to come and click on Andrew in my table here. Then I say comma. Where is this Andrew found? I am looking for this Andrew in this second table, in this column of name of employee. So I select that whole table. Okay, comma, then 0 to show that I want an exact match. 0, then I close the bracket twice. Press enter, and it's giving me back 655,000. When we come here, it is what is here. Andrew's salary is 655 million. Yeah, 655 million for annual income, and it's what we've got. And so that is what it's the same thing here for cars. Now let me do it a bit fast. I think we are getting it here. This is going to be index, open brackets. I'm looking for number of cars. I'm going to come here to that column for cars. Okay, select it, comma, match, open brackets. What am I looking for? We are matching Andrew, comma, Andrew, but matching Andrew, and where is Andrew found? Andrew is found in this column right there, comma, then I put a 0 to show that I want an exact match, then I close using double brackets, and I press enter, and it's going to give me 3, and indeed when we come here, Andrew has 3 cars. So I think that is now clear. Okay, you have understood the syntax. If I am to click in these tables here, you're seeing the syntax for index match function. If you look at the formula bar, that is how it looks like. If I'm to click here, if you look at the formula bar, that is how it is looking like. Okay, we have finished that. Now we are taking matters a bit a notch higher. Now we're asking ourselves, so if we want to transfer data from this here to there, does it mean that we're going to go ahead and keep filling each and every cell? Because here they're just 4 names. But what if they're like 100 names? Does it mean that we're going to keep doing the same? Of course not. You simply have to fill the formula in the first cell, and then you drag the formula downwards. Now that is what we are going to do now. Now as we are dragging this formula downwards, we want to see that when we drag this formula, is it still going to give us the correct answers? Let's experiment it and see. So since we put in the first formula in the first cell, I'm going to delete this one for Andrew here. We remember for Andrew it is 655,000. Okay, so I'm going to delete that. Even for cars, I'm going to delete it. But before I delete, I want to delete this and that, but let's include these first 2 names, Jimmy and Fiona. Okay, let me put here Jimmy. I also want Jimmy's information, and then Fiona right there. Okay, I've included these 2 on my table right there. So now I'm deleting Andrew's salary here and that. I'm going to delete those 2. Now I'm going to go ahead and drag this formula downwards. Even here, I'm going to drag the formula for cars, the index match function in the first cell, downwards. So let's do that. And I'm dragging this downwards. Okay, I'm also dragging this downwards. Okay, now that I have dragged those 2 downwards, so now I ask myself, we know that after dragging the first formula downwards, you realize that for Jimmy and for Fiona, it is showing us errors here, more like not applicable. But we know that Jimmy and Fiona, this table has an annual income of 2.1 billion, and this, why is it not showing up here? So now that brings us to the problems associated with dragging. Okay, and so we need to make sure that we look out for this. Now, where is the problem coming from? The other cells have been populated, okay, as you can see. But when you come down to Jimmy and Fiona, there is nothing. Why? This is the reason why. This is what happens when you drag. Now let's look at this Steven, the first formula. If I'm to double click on it, you're going to realize that those things that are colored, okay, there is purple here, and I think this is like bluish. You realize that the selection is moving. The selections are from top to number 16, bottom in the cell, as you can see. Okay, now let's look at what happens when we continue that dragging to Andrew, when the thing was dragged to the second cell. If I'm to double click on that, you realize that the more I drag it down, even the cell references start shifting. Take note that in the very first instance, when it was the first one, it covered Jimmy, number 1, up to Arthur down. So the second one, when we dragged it to the second cell, if I'm to double click on that, it means you realize that it is what? The reference is also shifted downwards. Now the selection is starting from Fiona, moving down to Arthur, and it goes to 1 blank cell downwards. Meaning in the second formula here, where we selected Andrew, Jimmy is not part of the selection in the formula. Okay, let's go into the third, where there is hope. If you're to go to the third and you double click on the third, you realize that it also shifted downwards. Now the selection is starting from Shube. It's starting from Shube and it is moving down to 2 extra cells at the bottom. the formula in the cell, in the annual income here for Hope, it is not including Jimmy and Fiona. Okay, let's move on to the next. Arthur. If I'm to double click here so that it reveals the formula, you realize for Arthur, again, the thing continues to, the selection keeps shifting downwards. Now the selection starts from Vivian and it moves down to some blank cells at the bottom. So because this, as you're dragging this thing, the references, the cell references that you selected keep shifting down as you drag, and it's leaving out names at the top. That's why when we come to Jimmy here, we want to find the information for Jimmy. As we double click here for Jimmy, you realize that in these cell references here, the thing shifted down and Jimmy was left out here. Jimmy is not part of the selection, and because Jimmy is not part of the selection, that is why it is bringing this error. Same thing down here with Fiona. If I'm to double click on Fiona, same. It keeps shifting. Now it's moving from Robert downwards. Fiona is up these ends. So it means that the formula is inside here. The references, the cell references keep shifting downwards as you drag it down. So now that brings a problem, because it means you won't be able to get results for some cells, because in some references they will not be featuring. So how do we avoid that? The way we avoid it is to lock the cell references so that when you drag down, they do not shift. How do we lock them? Again, let me just illustrate. When I double click the first Stephen, it's there. When I drag to the next, it shifted downwards to Fiona, like that. Now I want these cell references to be locked. So when I click on the first in the first cell, you realize that it has index D2 semicolon to D17. This right here is a cell reference. It is selecting D2 to D17. That is cell D2 to D17. Match J8, another cell reference here of C2 to C17. And it is these cell references that keep shifting when we drag downwards. So to lock them, so in order for you to lock this reference, to lock it, you're going to have to press F4. When you press F4, it's going to bring the $sign. Now it depends on your keyboard. On some keyboards, in order to press F4, especially now for laptops, in order to press F4, you're supposed to press the key Fn. Yeah, it is at the bottom left most likely. Fn, and then at the same time you press F4. Then it will lock. Or if you're using a desktop, as if for that one, the keyboard is structured in such a way that the F4 key, you just press it directly and that's it. So since for me I'm using a laptop, I'm going to press Fn and at the same time press F4. I want you to take note, as I press like that, it's going to bring a $sign. Now that $sign before D and after D shows that that's the first reference has been locked. I'm going to do the same for D17. I just click in D17 there and do Fn, F4. Same. Remember, I am doing these things while this is the formula in the first cell, the cell I'm going to use to drag. Then I'm going to come here, we have match J8, comma, now there's another cell reference here from C2 to C17. When I'm dragging, I do not want this C2 to become C3, to become C4, to become C5 when I'm dragging downwards. So to avoid these cell references to change, I'm going to lock them. How do I lock them? Now I'm clicking at C2. I can click at the end of C2 or there at the beginning, it doesn't matter. Then I press Fn, then I press F4. If you're using a desktop, just press F4. When I do it, you realize some $signs appear. I'm going to do the same here for C17. Okay, I put my cursor anywhere within it. Then I press Fn, F4. It is also locked. After doing that, I just press enter. So when I press enter here, it means that my cell, the formula in the first cell here has been locked. The cell references have been locked. It means if I drag it down, it is not going to shift. So let's do it. So as I drag it down up to Fiona, you realize that now it has brought all. If I double click here, you realize that the cell references didn't shift on Andrew. If I do the same for Hope, you realize that the cell references didn't shift like that. For Arthur, the cell references didn't shift. Okay, so now when I lock those cell references, they give me accurate results. So I'm going to do the same even for cars here. I'm going to go to the first cell. I've just clicked on it. Then I'm going to move to the formula bar. The cell references are E2 to E17. I'm going to click in E2, lock it by pressing Fn and F4. Do the same for E17, press Fn, F4. Do the same for C2, Fn, F4. Do the same for C17, Fn, F4. Press enter. Now this one has been locked. In other words, the cell references have been locked. So when I drag it down, everything is now good. So now that is how we do it. We lock the references when we are using these data sets. Okay. So now that is how we use the index match function when we are shifting items from here to there. As simple as that. Okay. So now, as far as we have come, this is when we are using the index match function. When they are just the cells that just have borders. Yeah, we just put borders in the cells and that's it. But now, if you do not want to have to deal with having to lock the absolute references, then it means you're just going to use what we call Excel tables. Excel tables, how are they generated? So let me illustrate that. So for Excel tables, we are going to repeat this whole thing, but now we are going to use Excel tables. Let me copy and paste this on another Excel sheet right there. Let me do that. We are going to use Excel tables and we are going to see the difference. Okay. Now the Excel tables, these ones are easier because when you're dealing with a lot of data, it's easier, it's better that you use Excel tables because Excel tables encompass all the data set. That is one. And when you're trying to drag out your formulas, like remember for an Excel table, what you include in the first column is going to be, in the first cell, that formula you apply in the first cell is going to be automatically applied to the entire column, automatically, effortlessly. So how do you create this? Remember we said technically, using technical terms, this is not an Excel table. These are just cells that have borders, that have just been given borders. But to put this data into a table, I'm going to say Control A, so that I select everything. Then I'll say Control T, like that, so that this thing gets into a table. You make sure that you tick on that thing of my table has headers, okay, because this thing has headers. Then I click OK. Now it has converted into an Excel table. Characteristics of Excel tables is that they automatically have filter options up here. Yeah. So I'm going to do the same for this. I'm going to say Control A, Control T also. Then my table has headers. I'll click OK, and now that's the Excel table. I always use Excel tables when it comes to index match. It is more efficient, easier. You are sure that you have included all the data. Now these are in cases whereby you have too many data sets. Because when it comes to the other, the previous formula, the previous approach, when you don't use Excel tables to do your index match, sometimes when you're dragging the formula, you have to do it manually, because let's say you double click, the formula will stop where there is a space. And so to make sure that everything is included, you have to drag manually, and sometimes the data is too much. So the Excel table saves the day. So again, we are going to do the same, just like we've done. I want Steve in here. I'm going to simply go and say equals index open brackets, match, index, where is Steven, where do we want? We want the annual income, so I'm going to come here to annual income and select the entire, the entire row. Now remember, before we were selecting it manually, we select from here and we drag up to down to select the entire column, okay? But if this column has, let's say, 1,000, rows, it means you're going to scroll up to the very end, and it's going to be time consuming. The advantage with an Excel table is that if I'm to select this, I simply have to go at the title. Are you seeing my cursor in the heading of the title? Then as I am pushing it out, just slightly out, before the arrow completely goes out, it turns black, that black arrow. Now take note, the black arrow has just gotten out. Its head is still in the title. Then I click. When I click, you realize that it has selected the entire row. Now, this is just small data, but if it was like 10,000 rows, this saves a lot of time, because in the previous approach, you were doing this manually. We were selecting this whole thing and dragging manually. And if you look into the formula bar, it is showing index, open brackets, table 2, annual income. Okay, so that's what we do. Index, okay, table 2, annual income, index, comma, then we shall say match, okay, open brackets. What are we matching? They're asking us here for the lookup value. The lookup value is Steven. Okay, I press Steven, then comma, then where is the lookup array? In other words, where is Steven found? I come here, Steven is found under the name of employees, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring my cursor into the title. As it is just moving out, take note, the black arrow, the head of the black arrow, part of it is still in the box or in the cell of the title, the name of employee. Then I click on that, then it selects the whole thing. Okay, then I press comma, then I put 0 here to mean exact match, just like they we've been doing it before. 0, then I close double brackets, enter. Now you realize that here when I enter, the entire table here is populated with the correct results. Now the advantage with using a table is that I do not have to lock my absolute references. Before, when there are no Excel tables involved, you have to manually go ahead and lock the references, so that when you're dragging the cell references do not shift. But when it's an Excel table, once you type in the formula in the first cell, it is going to be applied throughout the table automatically. Okay, let's do it for the cars, the column for cars. I'm going to say that is going to be equal to index, open brackets, index, where do we want our results? It's coming from these cars. Now, why do I emphasize that the black arrow has to be, the head of the arrow has to be in the heading? Because this black arrow, if I'm to push this thing up a bit, it is still going to show up there. Now, the arrow that shows up here is different from the black arrow that shows up here, like you're seeing, is different from the black arrow that will show up when its head is just dipping a bit into the title. If I'm to use the one up here, the black arrow, and I select, you realize that it's going to select the entire, all of it, even it, as you can see, the selection is going even beyond the table. That is not what we want. What we want is, we want to select just data in the table only. So that's why I'm emphasizing that the black arrow has to be just with the part of it has to be in the heading, and when I select, it selects the entire table. So that is index, that, comma, we come back to our table, match, open brackets. What are we matching? The lookup array. What are we matching? The lookup value. That's what we are being asked. Lookup value is Steven. I click on Steven, comma, the lookup array. Steven is found here under name of employee. I'll click on that, comma, 0, close brackets, and that's what we have. So you realize that when we use Excel tables, It's a lot simpler. With Excel tables, number one, it ensures that all the data is catered for. Number two, it saves you time from manually scrolling, and also you do not have to lock to manually lock the absolute references. That's the advantage with Excel tables. Okay, so I think we have that has been really covered. Now that has been really covered and it is done, now we are going to go ahead and do let's do a case study. Okay, in our case study here we have a detailed, what we are calling a detailed report here. This detailed report is having the serial number, the date, the entry, the image ID, importer name, all this. But now, out of this data, if I'm to scroll down, this data has 2067 entries. All these entries. This is too much data. But out of this data, if I'm to come here, there are some, these are image IDs, okay? If I may highlight that. These are image IDs. Now, these images, we are interested in just a few. If I'm to come here and click sample images here, we want just 12 of them. We have 12 of them, and out of these 12, we are interested in getting the top-up amount, the seizure amount, and the total recovery. We are interested in getting this amount of money, the corresponding figures in these cells, but these figures are coming from this detailed report. Of course, option number one is to go here, come here, copy this, come here and paste. In other words, you look for them manually, which is too much work. So what we do, we are going to use index match. Now, these are just cells that have boundaries. I'm going to convert this data into an Excel table. So I'm going to click anywhere within the data set. I'm going to press Ctrl A. Ctrl A is going to select everything, because when you're creating an Excel table, you have to first select, you make sure that it is selecting the boundaries of your data set. After it has selected it, then I'm going to go ahead and say Ctrl T. And I make sure I tick that box of my table has headers. I click OK. Now it has turned like that. Let me convert that to black. Okay, it has turned. That's my Excel table. I'm going to do the same here. This is where I want my results. Okay, I'm going to say Ctrl A to select the whole table, then Ctrl T. I click OK. So let me give that one that color. Okay, so now you ask yourself the question, now remember we are doing a case study here. So now you ask yourself a question. These are two tables. Okay, now what is the connecting factor, the denominator? Because this has all these columns, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 columns. Even this one has 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 columns. We want to shift information on top-up tax, seizure amount, these figures here. Information on top-up tax, seizure amount, and total recovery. We want to get information from this table that is black and put it in this table that is green in these places here. But now the issue is, what in these two tables, what is connecting them? And now the unique identifier, the thing that is connecting them, is the image ID. Let me highlight it in a special color. The image ID here. Even here I come in the detailed report, the image ID. It's the unique identifier. Number one, it's the unique identifier, and also number two, to ensure that data integrity. There are no duplicate image IDs. If there are duplicate image IDs, it is a problem. The formula will pick the first one. So it also means you're supposed to understand your data. Now, you might find, let's say, we have entry number here. We cannot, because someone may ask, what about the others? Can't we use importer name as a unique identifier? Now, this is not reliable. Why? Because these important names could be repeated. You might find that we are having here, we are seeing Mr. Vianney Ndahiro. Maybe somewhere within here there is another Mr. Vianney Ndahiro. So that brings issues that we have duplicate, duplicate names. Index match works best when the unique identifier that is connecting the two tables, there are no duplicates. If there are duplicates, it means that in your final results you're going to return errors. You get what I mean? Secondly, it's the same thing here with entry number. Here it is IM7. Sometimes these entry numbers are repeated according to the nomenclature. Now this is customs data. You might find that the IM7 for the IM7s for multiple years, and these figures are always repeated. So that creates a data integrity issue. So you have to be, depending on the data you're using, you have to understand it. You must be knowing what is going to give you the best results. So for this example, the image ID is assigned to 1, and there is no such case as a duplicate, and that's it. Okay, so now that being said, now the second issue now here is about the issue of cleaning. Now we are supposed to make sure that this information here is in the unique identifier. Remember, it is the unique identifier that is connecting the two tables. This table is being connected to that table by the image ID column. So the image ID in this column A, the green column, should be exactly the same as the image ID column in the black table. What do I mean by they should be exactly the same? Let me give an illustration here in what we've just done. Now, are you seeing here the unique identifier for name of employee here? Name of employee, this is the table, and here the unique identifier, or the column connecting the two, is the name of the employee. Now here, under the name for Steven, what we mean by the data being clean means that the name Steven here should be exactly the same as the name Steven here. Okay, these two names have to be exactly the same for this to work out, for the formula to bring back results. Now, what can cause these things not to be the same? You might find that, let's say Steven has a space at the end. Let's examine it here. Let me come here and put a space at the end. So I'm putting a space. When I put a space at the end, it means I have introduced a new character. And so it means that the cell here is not the same as the cell here. So I've put a space at the end. Let me press enter. So when I press enter here, Steven, and I press enter, do you realize that the formula is returning not applicable, not applicable? Because whereas it is Steven, this Steven here has a space at the end, whereas this Steven here does not have a space at the end. So that makes the data not to be clean, data integrity issues. Let's look at the word Fiona. Okay, you see this Fiona here. This is Fiona. Let's say maybe the person that was typing this out, instead of writing O, the alphabet, he put 0, Fiona, like that. It means this word Fiona is different from the word here, Fiona. That's why the thing has been distorted. So are you seeing that just simple things like that will distort the formula, or they will distort the results? So that is why prior to getting started, it is important that your data is it is clean. And data cleaning, when it comes to index match, is simply means that you have to make sure that the column that is the unique identifier connecting table A to table B, that the items there are as clean as possible. Yeah, they are the same. The word here, hope, let's say that the person that was typing hope here left a space in between here. If they left a space in between here, if you're to come here, you see here the word hope is full, it has no space. Here it has space in between, then the results. So now let's use this to show how can we clean this data. How? Okay, so how do we clean this data? Now there are a few techniques that we use. Now I'm going to give, what I'm going to use are the common issues. Some of the common issues are that you might find that some of this data has spaces at the end and in the middle. So what I do, now take note that here, I'm using this deliberately so that you're able to see. So for example, here we have the Steven. The Steven here has a space at the end. The Steven here has no space at the end. To make sure that these two cells of Steven are the same, you create, I've inserted it, okay? I've inserted a new column here. So I'm going to insert a new column here. So what I do is I use what we call the trim function. The trim function is going to cut out if there is any figure here, any space, any name here that is having any spaces in front or behind. Those spaces are going to be automatically removed using the trim function. So I'm going to come here and say equals trim. I'm trimming it. Trim, then I click on the text. Then I click enter. Now when I click trim, this whole thing, now everything here has been trimmed. So meaning that this Steven here, when it is here, it no longer has the space in front. And so what I do is that again, to select the entire column, like I said, just when the arrow becomes black, when it is part of it is still in the heading, I click on that, I select the whole column, I copy the whole column. I think you see how I've copied it. Then I come and paste it here. Paste special. Actually, I paste special, paste values, like that. Do not paste directly, because if you paste directly, it means you're going to paste also the formula from here, the trim function, which you don't want. So do you realize that when I came and copied and pasted here, the Steven thing now has changed? As you can see here, it is now back. So so now the Steven is, the data quality is now okay. That is one. What other issues have I created that I would like to reverse? Now, the word hope here. The word hope here has a space. Now, you do not know what other names here have spaces. But remember, you want to make sure that your data is integral. So everything that is here, if they don't have space, even here, the names of the employees, they should all not have space in between. So to make sure that you remove any spaces in case they are there, you're going to use what we call the substitute function. So I'm going to say equals substitute, open brackets. What am I substituting? The text, okay? The text, comma. Now the old text, I want to substitute any spaces for no spaces. So the syntax says here, substitute text, comma, old text. Now my old text here is going to be any space. So I'm going to click, open the column. I mean, it's called what? Double apostrophe. Then I click the space bar to show that the old text is space. Then I close it like that. Okay. Then comma. In other words, my old text says it is a space. When I say comma, now they're asking me what new text should be replaced. Then here the new text is going to be those double apostrophes without any space. Then I close, enter. Remember, with Excel tables, everything that you do in the first column is automatically applied in the rest. Now, if you're observant, you realize that hope here, the word hope here at first had a space in between. Now the space has been closed. So what I do, I still copy that entire column and paste it here. Paste special, paste values. And now when we come back here, you realize that the hope thing has sorted itself. Now then we have the Fiona issue here. Fiona here, the person that was typing in the name, instead of writing 0, they wrote, instead of writing O, they wrote 0. And sometimes that is an issue. Some people, if you're dealing with data from people, in the column where they're supposed to be figures, sometimes some people, instead of typing 0, they type, they type O. Now, Excel is going to recognize those two differently. So to fix that, I select the entire column. I say Control Find, Control F, like that. So in that column, I'll simply come and say, find what? I want you where you find here, I select this, Control F, after selecting the row, find, actually it's find 0, replace it with small o, yeah, there. Replace all, okay. So you realize that the thing has been replaced, and I think you can see here, Fiona, now the figures come back. Now that I've done my data cleaning, I close that. This was more like just for working, yeah? This column I inserted. So let me close it, delete it. And we get back our table. So here I was just illustrating ways of cleaning your data. So it's what we're supposed to do here, okay? We are supposed to make sure that this column here and that column here, the image ID, are the same. So what we do is we are going to first, like I've been doing before, you make sure that you trim it. After trimming it, you substitute. So what I do here, and I do it to both this column and that column. So let me do that very fast since I've already illustrated. So I'm going to first trim. That is going to be trim, open brackets, the text. It applies to the whole thing. I select the whole table, replace it, paste special, paste values, okay? Then I make sure that here there are no spaces. So I'm going to go and say is equal to substitute function in brackets. That's the text. The old text is the space. The new text is no space, close brackets, same. I copy this, I paste it at the image ID, like that. Then I go ahead and close that, delete it. It means I finished cleaning my thing. If there are any other issues, for example, you might find that some of these things have full stops at the end. If this image ID has a full stop at the end, and some of this it doesn't, that is also a data quality issue. There are other formulas that can be used to remove special characters automatically if you're dealing with a lot of data. But let's not get into those details, but they are there. They are just a Google search away. Some you use, so actually there are macros that do some of these things. Again, depending on your circumstances, you do your Google search, you watch a YouTube tutorial, and you're able to find a specific solution. So I'm going to do the same thing here with this. I'm going to insert, okay, I'm going to say that it's going to be equal to, I'm going to trim, open brackets, okay, oh, this, yeah, like that. After trimming, I say this is copy that, paste it here, paste special, paste values. Then after that, I'm going to substitute spaces. That is the text, comma, the old text is the space, the new text is no space, substitute it with that, enter. Then I get this as well, and I put it right there, paste like that. Then I come and delete that. So I finished cleaning my two columns. Those are the very important columns. That's one. So the other thing about data cleaning is that sometimes this data is given to you from, let's say this is data that has been filled in by multiple people. Okay, you've gotten an Excel sheet, but this Excel sheet is the kind where a lot of people have been filling information. So because a lot of people have been filling information, the Excel thing has been moving from different computers. People have been copying and pasting and applying different formattings anyhow. That also poses a data quality issue. And so for such instances, the best thing to do is to copy the entire data, open a fresh Excel sheet and do your data match, your index match from there. Like, these are more like precautionary things. If you're dealing with Excel data and the data you're dealing with is the kind of data that has been filled in by so many people, to uphold the integrity of your data, copy the table, put it in a fresh Excel, create a fresh table, and then start your index match functions from there. Yeah. Then also the older versions of Excel, sometimes when you're doing your index match function, you might put your data in a table format, but you find that it requires you to manually lock the cell references. You remember the same way we manually locked these ones here. You remember when we locked it when we were using those dollar signs. In some older versions of Excel, you find that you put your data in a table, and then you find that it is the thing is not, it's not playing ball. It's the cell references are shifting. So to avoid that so how do you know? Actually, how do you know? So this is how you know whether your Excel version is compatible or not. Let's look at this. For example, if you look at this one, we have an Excel table here. Okay, you look at this first formula. I think you can see here how it is written in the formula bar. Now take note, I am going to press the down key so that this thing goes to the next. When I press the down key, I want you to keep an eye on the formula bar here as I am pressing the downward key. So I am pressing, as you can see, the thing is moving. Yeah, I'm pressing the upward and downward key. And as I'm pressing the downward and upward key, you realize that the index match function in the formula bar is not changing. There is nothing that is changing. Okay? So when that happens, it means that the index match function has been applied correctly. Okay? It has been applied correctly. That is if I am pressing the down, where the formula is. If I press the down arrow and the up arrow, and in the formula bar nothing is changing, it means the index match function has been applied correctly. However, if I am pressing the down and up arrow and in my formula bar things are changing, I'm seeing figures that are changing, then it means I am working in an older version of Excel, and so it means that the cell references are shifting in spite of the fact that I am using Excel tables. And so that would mean that I'm supposed to go ahead to the first cell and lock them manually, like the way we did in this. Let me give an example of what I mean. For example, are you seeing this? When I press the upward things, actually, you look at that now. For example, as we are pressing this up and down arrow, right, you realize that it is the J that is moving. J8, J9, J10, J11, J12, J13. That one is supposed to move because it is where we are getting our data from. But what if we had not locked these cells? Let me try and remove these dollar signs here to unlock the cells. Here, I'm removing the dollar signs to unlock the cells in the first. And then we are going to drag them. Okay, I'm removing the dollar signs in the formula so that the cells become unlocked. Now that we've removed the dollar signs, Now I'm dragging this thing down. So I've dragged it down, it has brought back the same issues we had before. So there's something I want you to see. So I've clicked in the first. Now I'm going to press the downward arrow and the upward arrow. I want to that as I'm pressing upward and downward, you notice what is happening up in the formula bar. Now are you seeing that? In the formula bar, you see a lot of figures are changing. Okay? The absolute references are changing in the formula bar. The absolute references are changing. It simply means that they are actually shifting. They are not supposed to be shifting, but they are shifting. So when that happens, when you've used an Excel table, it simply means that you're using an older version of Excel and it is not being compliant with the Excel table, and so you should go ahead and lock the absolute references manually, like I have illustrated before. So that one is also done. I think that's enough with the precautions. Now let's go ahead and do this, and we get done with this video. So I want the total amount here, and the unique identifier is the image ID. So I'm going to come here, total amount, I'm going to say equals index, open brackets, index, what do I want? I want the total amount. So I'm going to come to my detailed report here, okay, and look for the total amount. I mean the top up amount, I think, yeah? Isn't it the top up amount? Yeah, top up amount, okay. So I'm going to come here again. When my arrow is just moving out, again I say there's a difference between the arrow, the black arrow when it is dipping into the title, and the black arrow that is up here. Do not click when the arrow is up here. There it's going to select the entire column even beyond the table. You're only interested in the data in the table. So you click when the arrow is just almost getting out, but its head is in the title. I click on that. So index that, comma, then I'm going to go ahead and write the word match. Remember, as you're typing this thing, you look at the formula bar. So it's index that, comma, match, okay, in brackets. Now, what is the lookup value? What are we matching? So we come back to our, sample images here. Our lookup value is this image ID. This is what we want. We want this image ID here, comma, lookup array. I want you to look up this here, the lookup array, which is the image ID here, this column. I click the entire column here, comma, then 0, then I close with double arrow, double brackets, then I press enter. Then it brings the whole thing. Just to make sure that the thing is, just to make sure that there is no absolute reference. Yeah, the thing is, it's not changing in the formula bar as I'm pressing my arrows up and down. So that is, we are good to go. So it means that these two image IDs do not exist in the next, they do not exist. I'm going to share this template for practice purposes in case you need to. Let's do this again. Now I want the seizure amount. Remember, we are using the index match function. So I'm going to say equals, seizure is going to be equals index, open brackets. So now the question is, I want the seizure amount. When I say index, open brackets, what do I want? I want value for the seizure amount. So I'm going to go to my other table where I'm picking the data from with the detailed report. So I go to where I'm picking the data from. I want the value from this column, the seizure amount. So I'm going to click all of it. Seizure amount, comma, then I say match. Match, open brackets. Okay. Remember, as I'm typing out this formula, keep your eye in the formula bar. That's where I'm also seeing. I'm matching. What am I matching? Okay. The image ID, it is what is connecting the other table to here. So I come to sample images. The image ID here, this one, I want this image ID, okay, in the first cell. I want you match that, comma, according to our syntax, they are looking for where is this image ID found? I'm going to come to the detailed report. The image ID is found under here, okay, comma, it is found in this image ID column, but I don't know where, comma, then I put a 0, okay, to mean exact match. Then I put my double closing brackets, then I press enter, and then it's going to give me that data. Then we go to total recovery, same. I'm going to say equals index, open brackets, okay, index, open brackets, total recovery. Where is my answer? This is total recovery. My answer is coming from the detailed report, where I want to pick my answer under the column of total recovery. So I click on all of it, comma, then I'll say match, open brackets. What am I looking for? I want the total recovery, but I want a total recovery that is corresponding to this image ID. I come to the sample images here. Total recoveries that are corresponding to this image ID, okay, that way, comma. But whereas it is corresponding to this image ID, I want you to look for it where, that's the lookup array here. So I come to the detailed report in this lookup array, right there, comma, 0 to mean exact match. Then I close my brackets in a double manner, press enter, and that's what we have. So that's the end of our case study. We have been able to transfer data from the detailed report to the sample images report here, and that's what we have. If you want to prove it more, you just go and do some sampling, pick some manual entries, and you're good to go. So that's basically it. In this session, we have talked about the index function. We've also talked about the match function. Then I have been able to show you how the two are combined. Then from there, we were able to look at cases where we are dealing with data where there is an Excel table, and data where there is no Excel table. That is where the cells just have boundaries. We've also talked about the importance of data cleaning, and I have showed you some techniques on how to make sure that your data is clean so that you get accurate results. And then we have concluded with a case study that reveals how this is applied in practice. I would like to reiterate that when I first did this index match thing, it was really driven by a desire to get a shortcut. During the time I was learning this, I had Excel tasks to do. They were mostly audit queries that I was supposed to be looking for answers to these audit queries, and there were thousands of entries to do. I first watched some YouTube videos on index match function. It proved disastrous. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it would not work. But because the alternative of having to spend days on a task seemed to be too bloody, that was enough motivation to give this thing thorough time. The things that I have showed you in this session are coming from several experiences of failed attempts and frustrations. You hit something and you find an answer, you encounter something that disturbs you and you get a solution around it. That is how Excel is. I basically learned all this from YouTube. The videos are there. So yes, whereas you have watched this, the only way you're going to learn is by doing it. It is going to first disturb you a bit, but after around 5 sessions of doing this, it will become second nature and it will become easy for you. I would also encourage you to, just to get another perspective of how another person explains it. There are YouTube videos that are explaining this very thing in even much shorter, time frames, in 10 minutes, some 20 minutes, and it helps to get perspectives of how these things are explained. It helps the concept to stick better. So this brings us to the end of index match. My name is Arnold Kisembo Rangakuramia.